Hey guys, so I'm not in the studio. I'm visiting my family up in Canada, so I'm in Canada right now. Hopefully, you guys are enjoying the Garage Stephen King-a-thon, where every day for the month of October we revisit a Stephen King adaptation. Hopefully, you guys are enjoying that. I'm enjoying doing it. And if you guys aren't tuning in, I suggest you do so. We're discovering a lot of weird movies, especially right now. We're in the weird section of the Stephen King adaptations. So stay tuned for that. But because I'm no longer in Maine and I went to Canada, I got an opportunity to watch a movie that I wouldn't be able to watch in Maine, and that movie is called Titane, which is a French movie, and it translates to titanium in English. Now, why did I want to watch the movie Titane? Well, this movie is getting a lot of buzz on the internet. People are saying this is the most disgusting movie they've ever seen and shit like that. Not a surprising thing, because this movie is directed by Julia Ducournau, who previously directed Raw. And when Raw came out, that was also the same thing. People were puking in the theaters, passing out in the theaters, all that jazz. Guys, I was hyped for this movie. I'm a big fan of Raw. I think Raw is actually probably one of the best horror movies in the past 10 years. I think Raw is a masterpiece. I thought Raw was just so creepy, it was eerie, it had a lot to say about university culture, hazing, discovering your sexuality. I just think Raw is a masterpiece. So going into this movie, I did have some expectations, but I made sure to check them out at the door. What did I think of this movie? It's a mixed bag for me. So for those of you who are bloodhounds, this movie is definitely more graphic than Raw. I remember when Raw came out and everyone started talking about how gory it was and how people were fainting, and then I saw it. I was like, okay, it's not as graphic as I was expecting. I'm the type who's a little desensitized to it though, so who knows. I thought this movie, in terms of body horror, lot more of it. For those of you who don't know the premise of the movie, by the way, this movie, Titanium, is about a girl who's a stripper, and she gets impregnated by a car, and she's going to give birth to a metal car baby. That's basically the premise, and there's this whole plot that goes around it too. She's a murderer, she's on the run, and she goes into hiding, and it basically becomes this liar reveal story at the same time. So, in terms of body horror, this movie definitely has more body horror than Raw. I went to see it with my sister's fiance, and my sister's fiance, he's not the type to watch these gory, gross movies. I was talking to him, and he actually thought the movie Scary Movie was intended to be an actual scary movie, and I had to explain to him it's actually a parody. So that's the kind of person I went to see it with, and he's never seen anything like this in his life. He had his mask over his face. He took his mask and put it over his eyes. He couldn't take it. Um, but he's a bit sensitive when it comes to visual stuff on the screen. But even me, I'm desensitized to it, and I haven't seen a movie quite as graphic as this in a while. Something that made me like uncomfortable when it came to the body horror. Where the movie kind of falls apart for me is the message, the plot, the characters, and I feel like that's all stuff that Raw did really well. As I said, I think Raw is a masterpiece. So, Raw was basically about this vegan girl who goes to vet school, and she has to do a series of hazing things, and she slowly becomes a cannibal. And I feel like that had a lot to say about university culture and discovering yourself in university, sexuality, hazing. Whereas this movie, the theme is not as out there. And when it comes to more abstract horror movies, I think the gold standard is Eraserhead. When you watch a movie like Eraserhead, it's clearly a movie about the anxiety that comes with being a parent. So, because there's that central message, whatever creepy, weird shit that David Lynch throws at you, whether it's the lady in the furnace or what have you, everything seems to revolve around that theme, so you can make your own interpretation. Versus this movie, the central theme is not as clear. There are some themes of caring for someone versus being cared for, and that kind of relationship. Something similar to like a movie like Phantom Thread that explored that theme. There is a bit of that theme going on. There's a slight theme of gender roles that's going on, although it's not as clear, and I'm really digging for that one. But as far as like a central theme, like Raw and like Eraserhead, like I was talking about, this movie kind of lacks that. And because of that, I was just left confused at what is this movie trying to tell me. That's ultimately the problem I had with the movie. The cast in this movie is the same cast as in Raw. They actually still have the same names as they did in Raw, which is interesting. Is it the Julia Ducournau cinematic universe? I'm kidding. That shit's lame. No, but as far as the cast goes, they did a really good job. They had to put themselves in a lot of situations that would be uncomfortable for an actor to put themselves in, and they did a fantastic job. Especially, I forget her name, but Garance Marier, who plays Justine in Raw. She was the main character in Raw, and she's a side character in this movie. I think she's a really good actress, and they kind of did a switch. The lead actress became the side character in this one, and the side character in Raw became the main actress in this. So they kind of did like a 180, which is interesting. Um, but it's like I always say anyway. Even when you do abstract movies, the goal is not to please 100% of people. Then what's the point of making an abstract movie? When I watch abstract movies, there's some that connect with me and some that don't connect with me. Raw connected with me. Uh, Titane didn't connect with me quite as much. But if your goal is to please 100% of your audience with an abstract horror movie, you're kind of doing it for the wrong reason. So although this movie didn't really connect with me, I would still suggest people go watch it because it's a very competently made movie and they might like it despite me not connecting with it as much. The cinematography is brilliant. The performances are great. There are some weird, creepy moments, the suspense building. There's scenes that I was on the edge of my seat. The body horror is very disturbing in this movie. So there is reason to watch it just on a visual level. But as far as something to me that connected with me on the same level as Raw, this isn't it for me. And I think Raw is just such a high bar at this point for me. Like, I was talking to my brother, and my brother is also a horror movie fan. But he and I, we kind of like different horror movies. I'll like the more weird, batshit crazy horror movies, and he'll like the more dramatic, like Flanagan and David F. Sandberg and those guys. He likes those horror movies a little more. Whereas I like the campy, weird, in your face, crazy batshit stuff. But we both agreed that Raw was a really amazing movie. And I think my expectations were a little high going into Titane. Um, so if I do rewatch it, I'll keep that in mind. But as far as first impressions, no, this definitely isn't Raw. But it's still a competently made film, and I would still recommend any horror movie fan go see it. Just keep in mind it lacks that central focus that Raw had. So on that note, guys, I'll see you around.